Okay, hi. I'm here with Lisa Houston. She is one of my co-authors in this amazing book, Joy Recipes for Abundance. And Lisa is going to actually share her journey through becoming an author and also a little bit about her story. So, hi, Lisa. Nice to have you today.
Hi, Sabine. I'm great. Thank you.
So, Lisa, your story is quite memorable, I would say. You have quite a lot of yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you're the founder of the encouragement, so I just want to introduce you in that aspect.
Yeah.
And you're a trauma recovery expert, and there is probably a reason why you are a trauma recovery expert because of your own story. So yeah, that was where my mind was already going because your story is just extraordinary. So maybe you could share a little bit what that was, and then how that felt then actually writing the story, because you just told me before we came online is that people kept on saying you need to share your story, and there's a good reason for it.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you, Sabine. Um, my story actually started where um, I felt like I had the perfect life, right? So it was a beautiful sunny day, and I was outside with my horse, which was my dream. I think every little girl's dream, you want to have a horse, and I always wanted one. And so here I had, I was married, wonderful husband, wonderful daughter, had a nice house, had a great job. And I went out to ride that morning, and only a few minutes after I had been up on my horse, there was a huge noise, and my horse just freaked out. She got scared from the noise, and she threw me. And I, went flying through the air and landed on my back. And at that moment, I was thinking, oh my gosh, like, this is a beautiful day. How could something like this, so terrible happen? And I really had no idea what the extent of the damage was from being thrown from my horse.
Mm.
And so I tried to stand up, and I couldn't stand up. And like, all these things went through my head. Oh my gosh, am I going to be able to walk? How is this going to affect my whole life? Because, in that moment, within, minutes of being up on my horse, which is the joy of my life, I was slammed to the ground and I couldn't get up. And so there were people at the barn, and they called my husband and got him to come. We were out pretty far, so I couldn't even get like an ambulance to come get me. So my husband drove me to the hospital, and long story short, my pelvis was broken in 3 places, and I had 2 vertebrae that were broken and a torn disc, among other things. I was bruised from my shoulders, down my legs, my hands. It was pretty intense, all the damage that had happened in my body, just being, slammed into the ground. And I'd fallen off my horse before, and it was no big deal, but this was, really devastating. And so getting that news from the doctors, and um, and we found that my left leg was paralyzed and I couldn't walk. And so they put me in a wheelchair and basically said, we don't think you're going to be able to walk again because of the damage that's done to your pelvis and your back. And I mean, if you think about that, here I went from the perfect life to, like, this trauma that affected not only me, my whole family, my job. I didn't know what was going to happen. And the doctors weren't giving me a really great prognosis either. They were saying, yeah, we don't think you're going to be able to walk again. And, of course, you go through these, ideas in your head, because you're thinking, oh my gosh, how is this going to change my life? What am I going to do? How's my, you know, am I going to keep my job? And all kinds of things like that. And, you know, at that moment, it was just such a shock to everybody. And so I went through, you know, this like grieving process, right? Like when you lose someone, because I lost myself in that accident. I was a very healthy, very active person. And all of a sudden, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't walk, you know, um, and I was in such severe pain. And so, you know, after weeks of just the doctors trying to figure out what they were going to do, they tried to do some physical therapy with me to get my left leg moving to see if I could walk. And unfortunately, they broke more things while they were trying to get my leg to work. And it was just like, there was just so many things going on. And, you know, my poor family, seeing me in that condition too, and my daughter, she was only 8 years old at the time. And, you know, it was just devastating to everyone. And so as some months passed and I started to heal, you know, naturally, because they wanted to do a surgery right away. And I was just like, whoa, you know, let's figure out what we need to do here. And so they just basically said, you know, we don't think you're going to walk. You'll never ride your horse again. You'll never have that mobility to do that again. And I wouldn't accept that, you know. And one thing that I've found through this whole journey is that, you know, even if you take a small step forward, you're still moving forward, right? You have to show up in your own life and be consistent, because I could have just listened to the doctors and sat in that wheelchair and never gotten up again. You know, I could have said, oh, well, you know, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to myself. I couldn't do that to my family. And I just had the faith within myself and, you know, spiritually around me. I had such great support around me, and encouragement, that I just decided I'm going to do this. And, you know, I had to go through several surgeries. I have pins, I have rods, I have all kinds of things in my body. But I tell you, after, you know, making that commitment to myself, that, you know, I knew this was not going to be an easy journey. I knew it wasn't going to be a short journey, but I knew that if I consistently moved forward, you know, even if it was the smallest step, you know, the smallest win during the day, oh, I could wiggle my toes, you know, something like that. As long as I could make that commitment to myself and really be willing to move forward, that, you know, I had that burning desire inside me. And as you know, I eventually did start walking again. I
Amazing.
walk frequently now. I walk every day as much as I can. You know, so it was a long journey. And one of the things that really helped me was, there's a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And he tells a story that even if you move 1%, just think about how far you'll go in a year. However, if you don't move and you don't take any steps, you'll still be in the same place. And that's something that I had really focused on. I tried to keep a really great attitude that, you know, I was moving forward and that I could do this. And, you know, through that long journey of healing, it wasn't only the physical healing I had to go through, but it was so emotional too. Because, you know, when you are in a situation like that, that trauma is not only physical, you know, it's emotional. Because, you know, think about the fact that, you can get stuck there. You know, that's a huge trauma, to your body, to your mind, you know. And some days I didn't think I could get through it, but having support around me, you know, anybody that goes through trauma, having support and people that can have faith in you too was so important.
Wow. That is so, it's you know, and it's so inspirational. And do you ride horses again?
I do. I ride my
Yeah.
horse as much as I can.
There is Lisa in the book.
Yeah, that's
Um,
my horse, Fiona.
Fiona,
Yeah,
and there's the inspirational your recipe with the horse in the background as well.
yeah,
The joyful
yeah.
day. Do, when was that? When did all this happen? How many years ago was that?
It was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And my last surgery was only about 4 years ago. That final surgery where I had to have the rod put in my spine because finally my disc blew out. I was trying to do as little as possible, you know, to add metal to my body. And so, you know, it was over several years that I had the surgeries done, you know, as need be, to have some reconstruction done. So it was a long journey. Um, but,
And
you
and
know,
it was
like I
worth
said,
it was with worth it because now you help others
absolutely.
recover, and there's
Yeah.
probably that there's always a reason why things happen as bad as they may seem.
Hmm.
So what do you do now in terms of how did everything shift? Obviously you're not in that job anymore, I guess. You're now you're on your own, you have your own company. And
Right. I have my coaching business. I
mhm,
still have a full-time job. Um, and I feel um, that was a good way to keep me moving forward too, you know, at the time, because what happened was, well, after one of my surgeries, I was sitting there just feeling a little sorry for myself and thinking, I don't really want to go back to my job, go back to that daily grind and all. So what could I do? And that's what's so important too, is to think about that. Don't be stuck where you are. Think about, what could I do to make a change in my life? Because if you don't do that, no one's going to do it for you, right? You're going to be in the same spot. And I found it very helpful to run through the things that I really liked about my job. I may not have like the whole entire job or, you know, the company and the way it was run and all. Um, but there were some really great things that I got out of that job. And one of the things I loved was teaching people and helping people and training people. And that was, you know, such a passion to me. And I knew that I could do that whether I was physically up and around or not. So that's one thing I worked on throughout my journey, is that was a passion of mine. So then I took, you know, coaching certifications. I did a lot of training. Um, and that's, you know, those are steps that I could do even if I couldn't get up and walk, if I couldn't physically go somewhere. You know, I did go to LA to go to my trainings, and I was able to do that, which is, you know, was awesome for me. Um, I still had some physical limitations at that time. However, it was so wonderful to be working towards my passion of helping people. And so throughout all this trauma, that's what I realized, is that I wasn't living my passion. You know, I was just in the daily grind, just, you know, doing my job and going to work every day. And there wasn't really any joy in my life. Well, my family was my joy and my horse was my joy, but my job was just a
mm,
job. And so I think I did a lot of contemplation while I was, you know, sitting on the couch or in bed or whatever, not being able to move. I didn't let that stop me, because I still had my mind, right? I still had my great attitude. I still had my passion and my integrity of helping people. So sometimes people get wrapped up in their circumstances and that stops them. And I found through this whole journey that it doesn't have to. So that's how I ended up getting into coaching. And I did some volunteering and I helped some people that it just so humbled me, because some of those days where I didn't even want to get up and move, because of the pain, I was able to volunteer and help people who had, worse traumas in their life and help bring joy to their life. And that pushed me, even further forward, knowing that I could help people. When you're in the middle of your journey, I was only concentrating on taking, a step forward and keep moving forward each day. And I had no idea that, my story could be inspiring, right? Because I went through so much trauma. How could that be inspiring? But actually, when you come to the other side of it, that's what's really great, because people had told me several times, "You're so inspiring." I'm like, how can I be inspiring? I'm just making it through every day, you know? Um, but then other people who had physical traumas and stuff were inspired by me. And that's really how I got into coaching. And I love doing it. So that's my main focus right now, is my coaching business.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then obviously, you were part of the collaboration, the Joy Book, which is, by the way, the
Yes.
second one in a series. First one that I've released together with 25 women was Rise in Pursuit of Empowerment in 2019, and 2020. We did this, another 25 women that are sharing their inspirational stories. So
Yeah.
as an author, how did it make you feel? Because I understand people said that you were inspiring, B, they said you should share a story, so then you finally did. So how
Yeah.
how did it all feel, and what's happened since?
Well, one thing that was very inspiring me too was your first book, Rise, because I know some of the women that were in that book, and that was very inspiring to me. And one of my friends who was in that book said, "You really should tell your story because it is inspiring." And I still didn't think that I would be able to, who am I to write a story?
Become a
And
best-selling author as
yeah,
part of this as well.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
that was like the furthest from my mind at that time. But having the encouragement, from my friends and my family about telling my story, I finally did sit down and write it. And wow, that was, a huge impact to my own life. Because like I was saying earlier, when you're in the middle of it, you don't really see it. But as I walked through my journey by writing it, and it was much, much longer when, when I first, started writing it out, just seeing all the steps I went through, and seeing all the support I had from my family and my friends, and how far I have come. I mean, the journey of writing that was hugely impactful in my own life. And I had never even imagined that. So, I think there's probably a lot of women out there who have gone through all kinds of things in their life. And one thing that was very inspiring to me is that you're never alone. Other people's traumas may not be the same as yours. However, the main focus is to keep moving forward. And there may be different tools you can use to keep moving forward. And I really encourage anyone to write down you know, a story of their life, even if it's an event that's happened or, you know, something broader, because it really opens your own eyes to what you've gone through and how far you've come. And so many stories in this book are so, so inspiring. And I know some of the women have gone through those same steps that I have, you know, is that they may not have thought that their story could be inspiring. However, you know, there are so many people out there that can benefit from your story. And that's why I think that that journey was great for me emotionally, to really heal myself through that trauma and focus on that, where I wasn't focusing before, right? So I was just focusing on, got to keep going, got to keep going. And looking back on it, wow, I mean, it was such a wonderful journey. And I really thank you, Sabine, for, you know, inspiring all of us to write our story, because it is so important. There's so many women out there that
Mhm.
that we could inspire, that we could help.
And I think through stories, that's the best way to do it, because you know it's interesting, and you can really relate to certain feelings and certain thoughts that you know that we all had, and that's what I noticed, especially with the Joy book, is when I was actually the last person to read all of the stories
Mm-hmm.
before it was published, and it was the first time had read all the stories as well after I had written my own one, and
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, story after story is like, no way. She had the same thing. She had the same guilt feelings and this, that, and the other. And it's just story after story inspired me even more so. And I'm like, yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're all human. So yeah, I'm glad, and I'm glad I had somewhere the inspiration to go and write those books. And
Yes.
yeah, it's 100 stories I'm after. So there's 2 more books to come. The next one's already in the pipeline. It's going to be called Shift, a New Era Begins, and it will be a little bit more about potentially shifts that people have experienced during the pandemic. It's actually open to men and women as well in
Mm-hmm.
corporate world, and also entrepreneurs. But obviously these ones were more like entrepreneurs, because the one of the I guess another aspect of being an author is to actually be considered, you know, almost like automatically you're now an expert in, you know, or an elevated expert, and you have gained so much more visibility. I understand that you've been to numerous invited to be speaking on numerous occasions. One of the, you know, very, I think it's quite a well-known podcast that I heard you talking about the book, and you were interviewed there as well. So yeah, I think there's all that aspect, and I guess I want to ask you about that a little bit, and also finally a few thoughts around, you know, this is a collaboration book. Um, Obviously you could have written your own book. Why do you choose the collaboration, and was it easier to get started that way?
Right. Yeah. So I think that, you know, I always shied away from writing my own story or even thinking about a book. A lot of my coach friends are always, oh, you know, I want to write a book. And I never felt that way. I don't know if it was my own insecurities of maybe I don't have anything inspiring to say. One of the things that was great about this was I may not have been ready to write an entire book,
Mhm.
but a collaboration was the best way to get started. And it really got my mind working towards other areas of my life where I could write things down and I could help other people. I mean, it's not just, you know, going through a trauma that's inspiring in your life. You know, your everyday life, you got to keep going. And it's great to have support around you. So this collaboration was such a great thing for me and for others around me. I was always afraid to share my story. I thought, who would want to listen to it? Who would be inspired by it? And going through this process and doing it, you know, as a collaboration, I worked through that fear,
Yeah.
and also, it opened up so many other opportunities for me, like different podcasts, and working with other people. I work with nonprofits and I work with veterans right now, and helping them transition from military life to civilian life.
Mm-hmm.
And, my transition may not be the same as what they went through. However, you go through a lot of the same emotions, you know, and um, and having to move forward. So I gained all those tools, and now I'm able to share them. And even if my story isn't the same, it has just opened up a whole new world for me, just having this one little story in here, right? It's moved me so far in my business, because now I'm not afraid to inspire people.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to talk about my story. So it's moved me so far by just, doing this collaboration. And I highly recommend it to anyone, because of the fact that it helped heal me, and it helped bring me even more forward, so that I can help more people and not have that fear, that insecurity within me.
Yeah.
So it really has opened up a lot for me, and I appreciate that, all that you've done too, Sabrina.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind comments. Yeah, and I guess that's the one thing is that you may have not felt, confident sharing your story to start with, and then I guess the second thought is always, and I think that would be a consideration for myself, it's the whole process, because obviously we've had a whole team behind this book, and it's
Right.
very beautifully high quality sort of book, and that's the kind of series that we wanted to create. We have a lot of images in there, so every author has their images, and something is inspiring to start with. There's me right here, and then the double page, talking about what they do, and also where we can find you. Maybe that's the next thing that we can just share before we're off. So you got maybe a link, or people really resonate with your story, where they can get in touch with you online.
And I do have a Facebook page, Zencouragement Coaching. I also have a website, zencouragementcoaching.com. And I do individual and group coaching. And I think that, one thing that's so important is, when you're working through something, is to have support. And that's why I like the group sessions too, because there are a lot of people that can support you, like your tribe, to keep you moving forward, to keep you up. And so that's what I love the most about my coaching, is to inspire people to tell their stories, to let everyone else know that they're not alone. There's people may have not gone through the exact same trauma you have, or circumstances you have. However, having that group support is just so wonderful.
Perfect. Good. Well, we'll share the link somewhere on the bottom or on the top of the video. Depends where we're posting it. So yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. Really appreciate. And yeah, if you're sitting here thinking, well, I'd love to share my story, and how can I do this? And if you're in time, you can apply for one of my other collaboration books, or there's a few more spaces left in the next one. So whenever you see that, book a call. There will be a link somewhere to grab that link, and then just hook up with me, and then we'll have a chat. Okay, good. Thank you so much,
Thank
Lisa.
you, Sabine.
We'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.